Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the podcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern, and we're feeling litigious today, but we're not going to sue each other, but we're going to talk about a whole bunch of lawsuits. Which
Absolutely.
We don't
FiST Chat fans.
We don't normally do that, but we thought that we'd be in the mood for one given recent events, right?
Oh, absolutely. If there's anyone out there in FiST Chat land unfortunate enough to look like me, I'm suing.
Beware, people. He's mad. So before we get into that, don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. You can get all our links there. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Interact with us as well. Catch all of our videos on YouTube, Vimeo, and Digicosm TV. And you can subscribe to our audio via iTunes, RSS, and FeedBurner. And check out our blogs. We got those pumping through on a weekly basis, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to say this week because it's all about what's written down, copied, and whatever else. And if we're not careful, we might get sued.
Well, that's it. I hope no one else has written a blog like mine, or vice versa.
Absolutely. But if in case you hadn't picked up the gist and you haven't been following our interests in Apple, etc., Apple scored a huge victory in terms of intellectual property in their long-running battle with Samsung. In just 2.5 days of deliberations, the jury handed down a sweeping victory, and they found that Samsung infringed on all but one of Apple's asserted patents, while the iPhone maker didn't violate any of the Korean company's properties. Interesting sort of outcome that. And it's just, I mean, some of the more obvious ones, I think, that they've, and should also mention at this point, they got a little over $1 billion worth of damages out of it.
Only $1 billion, they asked for $2.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess half's better than nothing, isn't it? But just some of the more obvious ones, like the rubber banding patent, the pinch to zoom patent, tap to zoom patent. One of the things that I've been reading in some of the commentary about this is like, is the patent system in America a bit odd or off that these types of things can be patented? It's not as if it's code or something, something a bit more obvious. I mean, what do you think, Steve?
Well, in my blog this week, I've asked any FiST Chat fans who can explain this to me to explain it to all of us. I don't understand. I understand very much, and I certainly respect intellectual property. If somebody has designed some software or hardware and it is theirs, it is their proprietary software or hardware, they have every right to protect it. I do not understand how you can just protect something that looks like something. Exactly.
I mean, thankfully they didn't have a patent on, a rectangular shape with rounded corners.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's a bit like Cadbury and their special purple, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they don't own the colour purple, although technically they own one shade of it now.
Exactly.
And I think it's the same with Apple. I mean, everyone knows the story about Mac OS. Steve Jobs saw it, liked it, and turned it into Mac OS Xerox.
From Xerox, yeah, that's right. What's going on?
Is this a precedent? Can Xerox now come and sue Apple? I mean, I would if I was Xerox.
And what about like later things as well, like the iPod, which was an MP3 player? I mean, granted, they turned it into a successful MP3 player, but they didn't create the idea of the MP3 player.
That's right. And when I was digging around through the archives there on the internet, in 1992, IBM came up with the first smartphone called Simon. It had a touch screen, Ben. I was like, now, if at any stage, there's no question that Apple has certainly perfected every one of those items along the way. And they've designed fantastic products, which we love, enjoy, and FiST Chat couldn't be made without. But they've improved on stuff that was there. And you can just imagine if somebody had tried to stop them making iPods, iPhones, Microsoft came out with the first PC tablet, in 2001, I think it was.
Yeah.
So they could have stopped the iPad, and Apple would have nothing, and we'd have nothing.
Yeah.
And in fact, Apple would have stopped Microsoft from copying Windows off Mac OS X, and we'd all still be using DOS.
Yeah, exactly. Typing in runtime commands and whatever else.
Best computer around would be a Xerox photocopy.
But that points to a larger issue, doesn't it? That technology is innovated via various companies over time, and in effect, they all build upon one another, and they do various things. And that can be big things like operating systems or music players or whatever, or phones, whatever it is, and it isn't necessarily that they're copying from each other exactly. It's just that they're sort of going along. They're moving this flow along that is building upon what came before. And it seems to me, obviously, this is Steve Jobs' rhetoric coming through loud and clear. Is that I think he wanted to. Especially during his time, and I'm sure it still applies at the company now, that he wants to put the full stop on it.
Yeah.
And whether this is just a continuation of that. I mean, Tim Cook was saying, in his the comments that he made afterwards, that this is all about. Where is it here? It's always about something much more important than patents or money. It's about values. We value originality and innovation and pour our lives into making the best products on earth. And, they owe a debt of gratitude to the jury for seeing it their way, kind of thing.
Oh, I bet they owe a debt of gratitude to the jury. I've got no doubt about that. And if anyone gets a chance, perhaps you should read some articles on what the jury have had to say about the case. I wonder about that jury. I think that these are once in a, or maybe not once in a lifetime, but these are very specific era type of cases. And I don't think that this case 10 years ago would have had the shot that it has had, for instance, today. I mean, only 10 years ago, Microsoft were enforcing their values and people didn't like it.
Yeah, they ended up in all sorts of antitrust problems, didn't they?
And I respect Apple a lot, and I do value exactly what they value in terms of design and interfaces. But even so, I mean, I don't think Samsung personally, as an integrated design, is anywhere near as good as, say, the iPhone. Yeah. So I don't think there's any need for Apple to infringe unless they genuinely want to hobble competition. And if that's the case, then they're really in danger of taking us backwards. And we may well end up, with another, after something like this, with another 10 years when we had Microsoft dominance, which was the only place anyone ever went was where Microsoft allowed you. And if Apple has any shortcomings, I mean, they can't do everything. They can't be everything. And they could hold us back now. And that would be anti-Apple values, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, that was the final point I wanted to finish up on here before we move into our news bites, was that it can... stifling the competition in this way, it sets a precedent for this type of environment to happen. And you really get that sort of innovation. One of the key aspects to it for innovation is that idea of competitiveness, of multiple companies working not necessarily against each other, but they're competing with each other to come up with the best stuff. If suddenly there's only one company that's doing it, they're not as good as Apple is in terms of creating these products. They're only going to hurt themselves in the end, because there won't be anyone pushing them on the side.
Open competition is the basis for good capitalism, and for Apple to try and shut that down, it isn't right on any level.
But then again, this could be just the extension of Steve Jobs' war on Android, because Samsung obviously uses the Android operating system, and this is a major setback for that operating system as well. So maybe they were trying to slam down Samsung so they could get to Google.
Oh, I've got no doubt about it, Ben, because we highlighted last year about the big battle that was going to happen between the titans of information and digital technologies, and I think that this is actually what we're really seeing.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on. We're still going to be talking about lawsuits here, and we couldn't obviously go by on a lawsuit episode without mentioning Hollywood here in our first news bite in film, because they tend to sue each other left, right, and centre over anything. But this one was, I think, highly amusing from what I saw. Martin Scorsese has been sued by the production company behind a film project that the Oscar-winning director allegedly promised to make more than 2 decades ago.
Of course he did.
I mean, you'd be promising to make anything 2 decades ago, wouldn't you, if you were looking for something?
This is as bad as Apple saying, like Microsoft stole an operating system from Apple, which they stole from Xerox. People promise everything in Hollywood. They promise you the world. It's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing would happen in Hollywood if people didn't make promises.
Exactly.
Or break them, for that matter.
It reminds me a little bit of one that was also done against Spielberg as well, where he allegedly misrepresented his age so he could get out of a contract at the beginning of his career. Who knows what happened with that? But it's just amazing that the Hollywood ones are always kind of fun to read about, because you kind of look at them and you go, are you for real? So anyway, all right, we'll move on. Our science news bite. Now, this one's probably a little bit more serious in that it's about gene patents, and there's a company called Myriad Genetics that won a court awarded them the right to patent 2 genes linked to breast and ovarian cancer. I guess the thing about this is that it's more about how can you patent, DNA, those kinds of things. Does a company have the right to patent that sort of thing?
Look, this is an ongoing saga. I actually have shares. I've got to disclose this. I have shares in Genetic Technologies, which is an Australian company which pays Myriad a license.
Okay.
For those genes. I don't know how you can actually patent genes, because everyone has their own. Sure, genes are genes, but you've got your own mutations within those genes. This is even more uncertain than the sort of Apple v Samsung case. I mean, literally, you should be able to patent your own genes and nobody else should be able to copy them. And where that would lead us, I don't know. I mean, I understand why. Medical research is very expensive. People who develop technologies to uncode or understand certain parts of the genome, I guess, want to recoup their money.
But wouldn't it be more appropriate and say if they came up with a drug or a treatment, or because that's something they created?
Yeah, look, I agree, but I guess what we're saying here is exactly as in the Samsung Apple case. The law allows this, and for those of us who have seen the movie Gattaca,
we're on our way, are we?
Well, these are the sorts of things. This is where this sort of thing starts. So I don't know. I think that's one for people to read up about, understand about, and write to their local member of Parliament or Congress.
Absolutely. And just finally, our tech news bite, which is more of a opinion piece, and I think wraps up our little talk on technology patents. Essentially, this one's out of Australian Macworld, called the Insanity of Tech Patents. It's essentially talking about the fact that too many patents are being tossed around like cannon fodder in these types of fights. And if, there are also companies that go out and they patent things and but they actually don't do anything with them, and it's called patent trolling. And then they come out of the woodwork, and then they start suing people when they try and, for alleged patent infringement. And it could be argued that maybe Apple and Samsung are doing not necessarily that exactly, but they're encouraging that sort of behaviour by engaging in these types of lawsuits, which is quite interesting. And maybe they should think about maybe setting a standard for how this is all going to work, because they're at the top of the field here.
Well, that's right. Look, as we know, people have been trolling with domain names online for a long time. I mean, I'm reasonably certain that one of the reasons we ran out of domain names was because trolls own 95% of them. I think you're right. Patents are the same, and the fact that you're able to patent designs rather than actual, brand new devices allows people to do that. Yeah. And that's probably something that needs to be looked at. But once again, the world has changed so much in the last 30 years and laws always struggle to keep up. So I think these things, and this is where generally for science and society, we're probably entering an era now where we don't have a lot of answers, certainly not at a legal level.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we're out of time. So thanks again for the chat, and I'm sure we'll keep an eye on this, see how it all goes. I'm sure we haven't heard the last of it.
I know this will be going on for a while, and if you're right about the fight with Android, well, then there's going to be someone throwing a punch somewhere else.
Absolutely. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. So we'll catch you next week.